What's up YouTube? Back in today with another video. Today we're going to go get my sister's EF Fairmont 5 litre Warrant Fitness. Now, as well as getting a Warrant Fitness for this car, we are also going to lower it. Now, a Warrant Fitness. What's a Warrant Fitness? A Warrant Fitness is something that New Zealanders have, and it is a periodic check of all the safety features of a car to make sure that it's worthy for the roads. And this goes from the tyres to lights to suspension, all that stuff. Anyway, this car's due for a Warrant Fitness in about 2 or 3 days, so it needs to go in for a check so that we can get it registered and get it legal for another 6 months at least. So, out of all the cars in this driveway, maybe 3 cars have a Warrant Fitness. No Warrant Fitness. No Warrant Fitness. Definitely no Warrant Fitness. Also, definitely no Warrant Fitness. No Warrant Fitness. I think this has a Warrant Fitness. This definitely needs a Warrant Fitness, but it has one. No Warrant Fitness. No Warrant Fitness. This has a Warrant Fitness. Alright, that was absolute bull. That was a clean warrant sheet. Never in my life have I had a car with a clean warrant sheet, and she takes this car in and it passes. Flying colours. Pretty sure it's too loud.
Yeah, what rust, mother.
What do you mean? What
rust?
What do you mean, what rust?
All your guys' Easter is full of rust.
What a hater. What an absolute hater.
You guys are haters.
Nah, this one is pretty tidy. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty tidy. So no, it's good. Good to at least see that this car's got a waff. Now we're gonna drive it home. We're gonna drive it home and modify it. Get the grinder, chop the springs, cut the exhaust off. You will be taking it back for a recheck in 6 months, so you got 6 months to enjoy it. So yeah, we'll go get this thing home and start on the mods. Quick pit stop. Alright, so my sister's been shopping up a storm to get parts for this car. So this car's all factory height, well, more or less factory height. It does have aftermarket King springs in it, but we have no idea what height they are. They could just be a heavy duty version of the stock spring, but the height is way too high, and we're going to fix that. So looking at dropping it about 2 inches, hopefully get it sitting nice and level as well. We've got a whole range of parts to go into this thing, so what are we lowering it with? I'm glad you asked. So we're going to be running Koni Red or Koni Classic front struts. We've got some Cobra Superlow front springs. Now these springs are actually to suit a 6-cylinder, based off that part number at least. So with this being a 5 litre V8 model, this should actually sit a little bit lower than what it should normally sit if it had a 6-cylinder in it. It should sort of sit around the super low, ultra low height. Usually the Cobra springs are a little bit higher than most when this all goes in. I've got some Superpro upper strut bushes. I've also got some Superpro swaybar link bushes as well, to go with a 30mm Whiteline swaybar, and the new D bushes to suit the swaybar as well. So that's the front setup so far. In terms of the rear suspension, this is what we're looking at. So I've got, again, Cobra Superlows for the rear, Monroe GT Sport shocks. These are actually a slightly shorter body, so should work well with lowering springs. Some new D bushes for the swaybar in the rear, and also some new link bushes, because the link bushes in the rear right now have cracks right through them. So I'm going to replace those so they're nice and fresh. And then yeah, it should be a nice handling package all around, especially considering that this car is quite heavy. They were never going to handle very well to start with, but you can definitely improve it somewhat. So we'll get all this stuff chucked in, go take it for an alignment and test it out. Now, because the rears are easy to do, I'm going to start with the rears. Should be able to knock this out this afternoon. So yeah, go chuck them in now. So yeah, I'm going to jack this thing up, and then we will get the wheels off, loosen off all the mounts for the shocks, drop the diff, change the springs over, put the new shocks back in, tighten it all up, and then we will start attacking the sway bar bushes, and yeah, that should be about it. Someone sponsor me a damn hoist, man. I'm sick of doing this stuff on the ground. I'm entirely too old for this shit. Alright, so car's on the stands, wheels are coming off, and that is what we have got to get out. So we have one bolt under here, 4 bolting the top head in, up the top inside the car. That shock in the middle there should come out. Then we'll do the same on that side, swap it all over, and then we'll start working on the sway bar bushes. So as you can see, these bushes are a little bit ugly. There's some nasty cracks in them. So yeah, no, we'll change those up, put some fresh ones in there, and then should be all good. I'm also tempted to change the bushes in the Whiteline. I've got a spare one here with Superpro bushes, but it's bright blue, and the theme with this car is red on red. Red on red, because somebody thinks they're a gang member.
No. Not anymore.
That's alright, it's all good.
Don't have a red car and put blue shit on it.
Is that all the wheel nuts out? Oh, stupid question. Alright, so I usually start at the bottom. Have the jack still supporting a diff. There's an 18mm nut up here, 18mm head on the bolt that goes through here, so start on this first and just crack it loose. And that wasn't even that tight, it should be a lot tighter than that. So we'll get that loose, get that removed. We'll need to put a spanner on the other side so it stops spinning. So that'll be the lower shock mount, that's out of the way. We'll go back on the inside of the car and we will undo the top hat, and then we should be able to pull that shock straight up through the top. Alright, so it's the bolt out. We'll push the Now we're going to have to remove this panel inside the car. This is to get to the upper top hat looking thing. It's got all these stupid little clips that Ford loves to use, so yeah, just pop all of that out. This is a very tedious task to do with one hand, but it's out. So that's the top hat there. Take that whole thing out. So you can loosen off the 4 nuts that hold this top hat down, and then that entire top hat should just pop straight up with the shock. This is the way I do it. It's a little bit easier. As you can see, the Monroe GT Sport's a little bit shorter, so it should be a nice match for the lowered spring. Alright, so got the rear shocks all fitted up to the top hats now. Bump stops and everything are all installed, so these are ready to go in. But first of all, we're going to drop the diff down a little bit, pull these springs out, and then we're going to chuck these bad boys in. I'll grab a trusty pry bar because this will make it a little bit easier to pop the springs out. So, diff's dropped as much as we can get it to drop. Leave these springs out a little bit. Alright, so I've got the old spring out, I've got the new spring sitting next to it. There is not much difference between them. It turns out the old springs are actually a king spring, and they're the low spring, so the standard 25mm drop, 1-inch drop, whatever you want to call it, from standard height. These were still stupidly high in the Fairmont. So, reason why we went for a different spring. Turns out the Cobras, and they have a tendency to do this, they're not as low as some of the other brands are, and just having these two springs sit side by side, which is a very vague way of doing it, but just comparison height wise, it looks like the Cobra spring is not that much lower at all. It is lower, but I have a feeling it's not going to be low enough. We're going to fix that in typical late night Nate fashion, so choppity chop. Didn't want to go too much because I've still got to keep this thing somewhat legal. So yeah, we'll see how this looks, and if it doesn't look like it's going to be low enough, round 2. Once we put the shocks in there and get it all bolted up, that'll be nice and captive, but yeah, looks pretty nice. Alright, so drop these shocks in now. Alrighty, let's drop that down. Drop the little retaining nuts back on. So I've got that located in place right now. Haven't tightened them down yet. What I'm going to do is go underneath the car, put the little shock bolt through, mount that up, and then we'll come back inside here, tighten all of these up, double check that nut because I've pre-installed this outside the car, and then we will go do the other side. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do is not tighten this up just yet. Basically, I've just nipped everything up very, very lightly. Once I get the other side in and nipped up, basically I like to jack the car up just so it's actually got weight applied to the suspension, and then tighten everything up to spec, or drop it down on ground level so there's weight bearing on it. then tighten everything up. Rear springs and shocks are in. Now we're going to get onto the sway bar bushes. So those bushes should not have cracks in them, so I'll change those out. So sway bars out. Look at the state of these bushes, man. These are the D bushes that locate the sway bar to the diff. Those aren't too bad. These, however, are the link bushes that link it to the chassis, and these are pretty hit it. Nice big split in that one. All deformed and looking like absolute trash. So we're going to replace that with this and this. New link bushes, new D bushes. Should be all good. Alright, because I love making things hard for myself, I've actually decided to paint this sway bar for no reason. This is why it takes me 5 times as long as it should to do jobs, but it is what it is. So that's just hanging up drying for the time being. While that's drying off, I'm going to go do a quick guard roll, and I'm not going to use a roller. This is what I use. It's a broken off bit of a rubber mallet. This is what I usually use to get the guard to somewhat start folding up before I put the roller in. Because this car is destined to go in for panel and paint, I'm going to be a little bit rough with the guards. Don't judge me. I'm doing this hard and fast, so basically I'm going to get the heat gun, get some heat into the guard, and then I'm just going to bash it with this. Should get the job done. So yeah, I'm not going to put this on video. So yeah, I'm going to heat this guard up. Basically just focus on that area. Come in here with a hammer, tap 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 tap. Should be able to get that folded in nicely. It's not going to be perfectly folded, but it'll just give it a little bit more clearance than what it currently does have, because this thing is going to get some big wheels put on it eventually. So yeah, we'll prep it as much as we can before then, so we don't have to do as much guard work when those wheels go on. So yeah, we'll get that sorted now. Sway bar's pretty much dried now, so I'm going to slap this in, and I'm probably going to scratch the crap out of it, but doesn't matter. We'll chuck it in anyway. Should look nice and fancy. It's going to make the diff look way out of place now because that's still untouched. I'm not going to bother cleaning up the diff or the Watts link just yet. We are planning on putting the 345 LSD diff out of the XR6 into this at some stage, so we'll tidy everything up when we do that. For now, I'll chuck the sway bar back in, put the wheels back on, drop it down, and then I'm going to start on the front. We are on to doing the double D bushes. So heaps of this installation grease. We basically just want to grease the inside of the bush. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's a knurl on the inside of the bush, and that's basically just so it has some sort of way of retaining the grease, because if you don't grease these, they squeak pretty badly. Put a fair bit of grease in there. yeah, we're ready to go. Don't grease that midsection where the actual the bracket fits on. It's not necessary. Alright, so let's just slips over like so. Perhaps if you get it in the right spot. There we go, that's better. Chuck this little shackle on, and then put the nut and the bolt back on. So the nut goes on the top stud, obviously, the bolt goes on the bottom. You get your 13mm and tighten them up to spec. Job done. So I'm going to start working on the front end of this Fairmont now. So the rear's all back together, not happy with the height at the moment, so probably going to pull those springs out again and give them another slight mod. Realistically probably needs another coil off it to get it to sit where it should be sitting, in my opinion. Ideally I would have wanted to see the top of the tyre flush with the fender, so there's about probably a 1.5 finger gap there. That's about an extra coil, so probably pull them out again, chop a coil off, chuck it back in there and reassess. When you're doing this sort of thing, you don't want to take off too much in one go. You can take it off, but you can't put it back on. So yeah, trial and error until you get it to where you want it. But I just took it for a test drive and actually it drives quite nice. It's actually got some feeling now in the rear, as opposed to really soft and sloppy as only way I can sort of explain what a factory E-Series somewhat rides like. But yeah, we'll do the fronts now. Once the fronts are in, have a look at it, see where the height's at, see how it drives. The Koni struts I'm going to put in the front of this have rebound adjustments, so it's basically trial and error. And the annoying thing is, to make the adjustments you actually have to take the shock out of the car, fully compress it to make the adjustments. So I'm going to chuck them in straight up and just see what they like. In terms of my Konis that I have in my EF Turbo, I chucked those in straight up and they were a massive improvement over stock. So I might just do that with these and see how it drives, and if it doesn't handle the way I'm hoping it should handle, then we'll have to pull them back out and start again. But we'll chuck them in first and see what they do. So yeah, let's go get some work done. Finger gap. We want to get this flush with the guard. This is the heights that we kind of want to run because they look tough, and if you've got the right suspension, it's a little bit more stiffer than factory. You don't have too many problems with bottoming out, so just learn to deal with it. Alright, so we are going to make a start on the front. First things first, I'm going to drop the sway bar out of the way. Sway bar I'm going to change out anyway, so I'm going to pull that off. So I'll undo that link. I've got to change all these bushes and put new ones in anyway, so that whole link will come out. I've got a shackle here and a shackle on the far side that holds the D-bush to the chassis, so that all needs to come out. I'm going to take this castle nut off, pop that taper off the upper control arm to the ball joint, push that arm out of the way. That will allow that to sort of move to give me a bit more room. Before I do that, I've got the lower shock bolt down here. That will need to be removed, and then it's into the engine bay, at which point I'm going to have to loosen off these 3 nuts here. That should allow the strut to actually drop out through the bottom, and then it will be time to swap the new stuff in. So again, much like the rear, we've got King springs in here, and by the looks of it, can't see the brand there, but generally that specific tint of blue is Monroe, and these are old as Monroe shocks. So I'm basically going to take that entire assembly out. The only thing I actually need is the top hat. The top hat will swap onto the Konis, new bushes and everything, new springs obviously, and yeah, can swap that in and hopefully get this thing sitting nice. Alright, so we got the driver's side strut assembly up right now. Just about to pull it apart. I don't know what the hell's going on with this, but according to that part number in there, KFFL-52, it's a king spring. It's saying that it should be the low option, which is about 25-30mm drop from factory height. Yet this Fairmont was high as f***, so I'm not too sure what's going on there. Either these springs have been labelled up wrong, because in my opinion they were closer to a factory base model Fairmont ride height, essentially. That spring there should have had it sitting around XR height, which that was far from, so doesn't matter. I'm going to pull these apart. Like I was saying, I need to take the top hats off these. The top hat is the only thing I need to retain from this entire assembly. The rest of it can just get chucked. Well, might go on marketplace, I'm not too sure yet, or I'll keep them for spares and get them compressed or whatever. So either way, I'm going to strip these down, get the Koni set up in the vise, and then we'll figure out what we need to do to get the springs sitting nice and then get it all assembled. Now, I have absolutely no idea how much tension is on this spring right now, so I'm going to use my spring compressors, and I've got them set up like so. Handy tip, if you are putting these spring compressors on, have them with the nut end that you use to tighten them down the bottom. You can put an extension, if you've got these style ones at least. Get clearance that way, so if you put them up on the top side, very close to hitting the top hat. So, tip of the day. And like always, gradually tighten each side bit by bit. Basically all I'm looking at doing is just taking a little bit of tension off. Just tighten them up fairly evenly. Last thing you want is one of these things exploding in your face. It's just to take a little bit of tension off. If these were Superlows, you don't even need to use spring compressors. You can literally just undo the top nut and the whole thing just falls apart. Hopefully, what I'm looking for is when I assemble the Konis, I should be able to do that, because every single E-series that I've done a spring swap on, the Superlows always go on without needing spring compressors. So if I have to use a spring compressor to get this thing assembled, the spring's too damn high. Another helpful tip, when you are using the spring compressors, you don't have to compress the spring like completely squashed up. You're literally just taking off just enough tension that you can undo the top hat without it exploding apart. So right now I've done these up a couple of turns each one. What I'm going to do now is loosen off the top retaining nut. And what I'm looking for is, as I'm undoing it, which is really hard to see on the camera, but you should see this sort of gradually move up by itself, because it'll be slightly under spring pressure. But if you've taken enough tension off the spring, you should be able to undo that without it springing apart. So that tells me that there's no pressure on that top hat right now. I can literally just pull the top hat off, the spring will come off, undo the spring compressors, and job done. Take off the top washer. There we go. So now I can take the spring compressors off, take the top hat, and swap it onto the Koni. So that's the top hat we're after. Now everything gets reused here apart from this bush here, so just need to lever this out. Because we're changing a whole bunch of stuff, we're going to chuck these Superpro bushes in as well. So, got the Koni all mounted up in the vise right now. God damn, this is a spicy looking strut, man. Holy damn. Such a cool looking strut, man. So they come with this, I don't know what you call it. I'm pretty sure it's called a de-aerating washer or something. Can't remember. So it comes with that. It comes with a... it's like a weird rubber foam bump stop. But this is quite cool. So definitely going to leave that in place. Now, as you can see, these struts don't have a spring seat mounted to them. Insert spring seat here. So I'm going to have to mod this very, very slightly to get it to fit over the strut body. I could probably force this over, but that will scratch all this brand new coating off it, and I'm not about to do that. So I'm going to take a little bit of material off this, just enough to get it to slide on. I'll do a little bit of a comparison against the old strut, just to see where the spring seat is sitting compared to that one, and do a little bit of a comparison on the springs as well, just so I've got a rough idea of where this is likely to sit height-wise. There is these 3 grooves here which you can actually take this little C-clip out of and either locate it above or below, and that'll raise your ride height. At a rough guess, it looks like it might be about 10 mil. So you don't have a massive amount of adjustment. Obviously if you're going from the top position to the bottom position, you've got about 20 mil total, but it allows you to fine adjust. If you want to make a slight adjustment, you can basically just take tension off the spring, pop the clip out, move it wherever you want it, put it back in place, and yeah, you can adjust your ride height that way by a small amount. I'll go and do some quick comparisons now, and I'll get the spring seat opened up a slight amount, then we'll get into putting it all together. Alright, turns out there's a slight amount more material of the coating right on the edge of that lip, so this didn't need to be opened up that much at all, probably, I don't know, 0.2 of a millimeter, if that. So right now it's a bit of a snug fit, but once that goes on, nice and close fit until it gets down to that seat, so beautiful. Struts look pretty similar in terms of where this height of the spring seat is. You can also see the shock body is a little bit lower on the Koni as well, a little bit shorter, which is good when you're running a lowered spring. So yeah, I think these will work out just fine. In terms of the springs, these are not far away from each other at all. If anything, the Cobra's probably wound a little bit tighter of a coil. In saying that, these Cobra springs that I'm about to put into this are actually a 6-cylinder spring, so it should sit a little bit lower than what the V8 spring would sit, but I have my doubts that it's going to sit where we want it, so not sure. I'm tempted to take about a coil off, or half a coil at least, and see what it looks like. Highly likely it might need to go shorter, I'm not 100% sure, and it's trial and error until we actually chuck it in the car and see firsthand where that height is actually going to be. Anyway, I'm going to try some stuff. I'll put it together, chuck it in and see how it looks. Hopefully it'll sort of sit around Superlow height. I am a little bit doubtful because the Cobras that I've got in the rear right now were apparently Superlow, and they are far from it. They were like stock XR height, if that. So I'm going to pull those out and probably cut another coil off. Like I was saying, it's trial and error. So we'll chuck it all in and see what the results are. So I've changed this now to locate the circlip on the bottom groove. What that's going to do is drop the spring seat down another 10 mil, so it'll add to a little bit more low. So I can just go back on as intended. I don't know, a calculated guesstimation is what I'm going to call it. I think this will get it pretty close to where I need to. Worst case it's too low, I can bring the spring seat up a maximum of 20 mil. Also worst case, it's too high and I have to pull it all back out again. Either way, I'm going to try it, see what it's like. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now before I assemble this thing is I'm going to check where the setting is for the rebound. So according to Koni, you need to compress the rod all the way down into the shock body. You should be able to sort of locate it and you'll feel it sort of slot into position. What that does is it engages a little threaded adjustment right at the base of the strut body, and I believe turn it clockwise, that'll increase the rebound of the strut. And as far as I can tell, the Konis come from factory at 0 basically, so it's at its lowest setting. So basically push this all the way down so it's bottomed out there. Now apparently, there we go, So right now if I turn it a little bit each way, it's basically locked into a slot, so from there I can't turn it any further anti-clockwise, but I can turn it clockwise. So it's one turn, two turns, so you got 2 turns max. So what I might do is back that off to 0. So that's 0 there. Might just do half a turn, just see what it's like. So it's half a turn there, approximately. So from there, once you're happy with it, release it. You'll need to get it back to full extension, assemble the strut with the spring and all that stuff, chuck it in the car and give it a jam. Now, one thing I didn't mention is before you take the strut out of the car, or at least before you disassemble the top hat from the original strut, take note of how the studs on the top hat are aligned relative to where the bottom bolt hole is for the shock mounting. Makes it easier to chuck it back in the car. Not so much an issue on these ones because the entire spring seat can actually pivot, can actually rotate. Even when it's fully tightened up, there is still that adjustability. Not so much the case if you're using just off-the-shelf shocks that have a fixed spring seat essentially. So yeah, make sure you take note of that, otherwise you'll be pulling things apart or trying to lever things, and yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Don't be like me and do that. I've learned from experience. And like I was saying earlier, it's usually a good sign when you don't need spring compressors to reassemble this. Generally, you know, the height is going to be pretty good, so in my opinion anyway. But yeah, like I was saying, I've managed to get this started without any spring compressors, so fingers crossed it's actually where it needs to be height wise, and then we won't have to touch this again. And there we go, that is one Koni and Cobra spring assembly put together. Alright, so that's the new strut in place. Looking pretty good, very nice. Like I must say, man, that red on red combo is pretty spicy. So yeah, we'll go and pull out the other side now, rinse and repeat, and then yeah, we'll get onto the sway bar. Alright, so the other strut is mounted up now. I've got the sway bar out. Was going to try and get some videos under the car, but the wind is so strong that it actually blew the camera over 3 times and almost damaged my brand new camera, man, so not going to do that again. So what I'll do, just do a comparison of the sway bar that we're putting in versus the old one. Like I was saying earlier, we're chucking a Whiteline sway bar in here. So this is a 30mm non-adjustable, and it basically just fits straight in as per factory. Uses the original link pins. I've decided to change the bushings out because the ones that are in the car are actually some sort of polyurethane type bush. As far as I know, they're red, but they're extremely flogged out. So I've got some Superpro bushes that we're chucking in as part of all this upgrade. So yeah, it should make a nice difference. I've done the sway bar upgrade in multiple cars now. For an E-Series, definitely 30mm for the front if you can, 24 for the rear. It helps massively with the way the car handles, especially turning in. It's a lot flatter, less body roll. That's what these bars are designed to do. Alright, sway bar's all done now, everything fits, everything has clearance, we're done. Now we are going to roll the guards, and yes, I am using a guard roller for the front, and no, I'm not going to use a hammer this time for the front ones. The front ones are a lot easier than the rear ones are, so guard roller it is. So, front's all done. The rear needs some more adjustment. So I basically lowered it the other day, taking half a coil off, thinking that was going to be enough. Barely got it to XR, or Tickford height, which is about a 30mm drop from your standard base model Fairmont Falcon ride height. So we're going to address that now. So, choppity chop. Just taking the springs out again. Basically what I'm thinking of doing is taking another coil off. Another coil should drop another 20-25mm easily, maybe more. Right now I want to probably go about 25mm at least to get it sitting nice and level. The front's actually really nice at the moment. The rear is, yeah, it's just killing the vibe at the moment. So we're going to fix that now. Alright, so springs are in. Everything's bolted back up in the rear. Just go do a check on the springs, make sure they're still captive when the diff's at full drop. So that's a full drop. So it's still captive, so they can't fall out of position when it's at full drop. Nice and safe. So, out on the road taking it for a spin now, and man, what an improvement this has been over the original suspension. So much tighter now. The old suspension was a little bit floaty, If you've ever been in a boat or an E-Series, you know what I mean. They lean quite a bit. Stupid amount of body roll. That's what you get when you got a heavy 4-door sedan. It also doesn't help when you got a massive lump of iron of a 302 Windsor V8 up front as well. So yeah, that handles quite well. I've got to say the Koni struts make a massive difference. I'm running some Superlow springs with some Monroe GT shocks in my LTD, and that thing rides like crap compared to this thing with the Konis. Actually surprisingly comfortable as well. I was expecting it to be a little bit bumpy, but it's actually not that bad at all. I would say this rides way smoother than the LTD does. On similar sort of height, I would say this is probably a little bit lower than the LTD. The LTD is sitting on Superlow springs at the moment with Bilstein shocks in the rear and the Monroes in the front. But all in all, yeah, it actually rides really smooth. I haven't had the alignment done just yet either, so obviously when you lower a car, it throws the camber out a little bit. So generally on these cars you need a camber caster adjustment kit. And right now I haven't fitted one of those, so it's still running the stock stuff up front. You can't actually run much in the way of shims to space your upper arm in or out to control where your camber and your caster settings are. So I will need to fit a camber caster kit in this at some stage before it does go in for alignment. But until that time, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, pretty stoked with how it's driving. So I think my sister will be happy with it. And yeah, like I was saying, it's a relatively cheap package, but it's a package that seems to work pretty good. So the sway bar upgrade up the front, it's definitely helping out with the turn-in. It doesn't really want to roll anywhere near as much. So yeah, it's definitely a good combination of improved handling and still retaining a really nice ride quality. Alright, so that brings us to the end of this video. Quick recap of what we've done on my sister's 1995 EF Fairmont 5-litre V8. So we've done a suspension upgrade. We've gone with Koni Red, Koni Classic adjustable front struts. We've gone with a Monroe GT Sport shock in the rear. We've done the swap to some Cobra branded springs, which are made right here in New Zealand. The Cobra springs were actually labelled up as being the Superlow option. Turns out we didn't actually get the height that we wanted with these springs, so we had to make some adjustments. So I've taken half a coil off the front springs, and I've taken 1.5 coils off each of the rear springs. That's brought the ride height down nice and level. It's probably a 50 to 60 mil drop from the original springs that were in the car, but it still rides nice. It's still fairly practical for a daily. It's smooth, it's a little bit firmer than what it was previously, but it's still a very comfortable ride, so we're pretty happy with how that's turned out. It handles a hell of a lot better than what it did before, and it looks the part now as well, so I'm quite happy with it. I know my sister's quite happy with it as well. As part of this upgrade, I've also done a 30mm sway bar up the front from Whiteline. This is a non-adjustable bar, and it's basically just straight bolt in. I've also opted to put in the Superpro sway bar link bushes as well, just to replace the old bushings. Might as well while it's all apart. I've also done the rear sway bar bushes as well. Aside from that, that's basically it. Like I was saying earlier, I haven't had this taken in for an alignment just yet. We will get that sorted soon. So yeah, there's a fair bit of work to come in the future for this car, which should be good because I've enjoyed working on this car so far. So excited to see where this ends up in a couple of months' time. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on this project as it unfolds, and yeah, hopefully there's some good content that can come from this. So that's enough talking from me. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate all the support as always, the likes, the dislikes, the shares, the negative comments, the positive comments. It all helps the channel get some exposure. Apologies to anyone that has been waiting on content coming from this channel. I am trying. It is just a struggle for me to try and find time to do this these days. That's one of those things. So yeah, again, thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, chat.